Oh, hi again. Sorry about that last video. I know I kind of ended abruptly. This is video number 2, so I'll be sure to mark that this one is a continuation of the last one. Uh, Lack of a better explanation, I didn't have my cord in my phone and my battery was about to die, so I did have to take a quick break. Anyway, during the last video, I was talking a little bit about equipment and I was setting up my tip-ups. We talked about the line that I like to use, and we talked about the trick of using the button to mark your water line. So I'll pick up from there. Anyway, in the last video I mentioned that a valuable piece of equipment is your rubber band. And I'm going to show you real quick what I mean. When I set up my tip-ups, okay, I don't have a hook or anything on this line. So if you look closely, I just wrap rubber band around it a couple times to hold it, so that way it doesn't come unspooled when I'm not using my tip-ups. So that's what I was talking about when I said the rubber band is an invaluable tool. It has multi-uses. You can use it to put around the body to hold it so it doesn't open up if it's loose. I do keep mine pretty snug, so they don't typically open up, but you can also use them to hold variety, different varieties of equipment. And then, as funny as it seems, is I've actually put one on my belt in the past. And reason being is because when you put one on your belt, and then you can turn around and you can put your equipment and use it to hold a pair of scissors or hold a pair of pliers, and you can actually use it just to have a way of holding these when your hands are tied up, which is nice. But anyway, little tidbit. Anyway, back to equipment. So before I talked about line, and I'm going to show you real quick, I do have extra line all the time. And this particular line I bought at a shop down in Connecticut. I do have green also. I didn't mention green, but green is one that I started getting into just a couple of seasons ago. This particular line, the spools come tied to each other. And if you look, I mentioned that I use an elastic. These are spooled in a way that they don't usually come undone. This one also has an elastic. And for whatever reason, the elastic came undone, and I talked about how they can become entangled. And while this one wasn't being used, the line did unspool, and it was actually beginning to create a little bit of a rabbit's nest. So I'm lining that back up, and then I'm going to use the elastic again, put that back on there. And why they do this, I have no idea, instead of just selling them individually. But each one of these has about 50 yards of line on it. Depending on what you're fishing for and how deep the water is, if I'm fishing in very deep water, I want more than 50 yards, which is probably why they do this. They probably do it so you can put up to 200 yards on a spool without cutting the line. That would be my guess, but I don't know for sure. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know everything, and I do learn as I go. So I will venture a guess, and that would be it. This line is, I told you, I like a 40-pound test. This one is a little heavier. This is a 45-pound test. When I bought this, they didn't have my traditional 40. So the people that sold this, they do sell it for whatever reason. Again, probably the company, probably the manufacturer. They only have odd pounds. They don't have like 30, 40, 50. This is a line put out by a company called the English Connection. It is ice line. Just to show you advertising, okay? If you look at the spool on this, you see right there, it actually says smoother, implying that this line is very smooth. However, I can tell you that feeling it, it is a traditional braid line. It's not smooth. It is a traditional braid. Actually, I like the white line I have on my tip-ups. I do like that line better. But, you know, nowadays you buy what you can get. We live in the world of online shopping. And one of the things I don't like about online shopping is you don't get to see the product, you don't get to feel the product, you don't get to touch the product before you buy it. You're looking at a picture. And unfortunately, the stores, the online shopping has put a lot of our stores out of business. So I, for one, this is going to be my public service announcement for this video. I'm going to ask you, if you can, whenever possible, I prefer that you go to a store and buy your equipment. I'm asking that you don't use Amazon, you don't go online and buy it from places that do not have actual physical stores. Again, why? First, let's be real. I want to see what I'm buying. I want to touch it. I want to hold it. But more importantly is there's not enough stores left that we can walk into and buy a piece of equipment. If I'm going ice fishing today and I'm getting ready for my ice fishing trip and I realize, oh my God, I don't have a piece of equipment that I need to go fishing. I don't have 24 hours to wait for that to come. I want to be able to go to a store, walk in, and buy that piece of equipment. Also, most of us buy our bait from fishing stores. So I walk in and I turn around and I can buy a couple of lures for jigging. I can buy line if I need it. I can pick up an extra tilt if I need it. And then I can go over and I can tell them I need a dozen or 2 dozen shiners or minnows or whatever I'm fishing with for the day. And if we keep buying online, those stores are going to go out of business. So we need to support those stores as much as possible. So if you live in an area that has a local fishing store or a bait shop or a sporting store, especially the mom and pop ones, I'm telling you, please support them. I get it. You might pay a nickel or dime or a quarter more. I'm not disputing that fact. That's how the online companies get you. They undercut their prices until they go out of business. But the reality is, you know what you're buying. You know what you're getting, and you're supporting local business. And more importantly is, like if you look at this one, if you look right down here, and I don't know if you can see it because it's a little blurry, but on the bottom there, it says Made in USA. So I bought these from a local sporting shop, and I know that they were made here in the US, not in China. And personally, I'm going to buy something made in the USA every time I can. I'm going to support USA-made products. So anytime I'm doing any of these videos, I want you to understand that I do support US-made products, and I do support local business. And you're going to hear me talk about this many times, you know, in the future if I do additional videos down the road, because I am very anti-online shopping. Enough said on that. Go back to my line. In my line bag, you'll see that I also have a couple of spools from the same company. I actually have a couple spools of black line, and I typically use white line or black line. Personal preference. Can I argue about why I do it? No, I can't. There's no real reason why I prefer white or black. Some people say visibility. They say the black line is less noticeable by the fish in the water. Some people say that the white line actually lures the fish because they see the line flash, the light flashing on the line in the water. There's a million reasons why people use one or the other. And for me, it's just preference. As you saw, I bought green line. Again, for me, the color is less important than the quality of the line. I want a good, strong braid that's not going to break when I have a fish on the line. And I can tell you right now, these spools, again, I told you already, I prefer a 40-pound test. These are also from the Angles Connection. And for whatever reason, they don't seem to have even numbers like 30. I shouldn't say even, but they don't have the 30, 40, or 50. They seem to have odd strengths. And these are actually 36-pound tests, which is, for me, that's perfectly fine. 36 pounds. I don't care what fish in Massachusetts you hook, you're not going to break a 36-pound test. It's not going to happen. All right, so they do put elastics on these spools. Again, same company. It's the Angles Connection, and they do put an elastic on them when they sell them. So I talked about the elastic and how valuable elastics are. Well, while I was showing this to you, the elastic just broke. It's a very small elastic that they have on there. So I do keep elastics in my equipment. I now have an elastic that I can throw on there, and I'm good to go. Valuable piece of equipment. Anyway, so again, these are ice lines. It is important because some lines do weaken when the line gets really cold or icy, and you want to make sure that the equipment that you're using is equipment that is made for the environment that you're fishing in. So these are ice lines. The Angler's Connection, the black braid, it boasts being a thinner line. And the black does appear to be a little bit smoother than the green. The green has a little bit more feel to it. But it's a typical braid line. It does have that braided feel to it. And I can't see where it's that much thinner, but it does look like a decent line, so that's why I made the choice to buy it. Right now I do have about 10 spools of line that I keep in my bag. And do I need all this extra line? No. But I want to make sure that if I'm out and I'm fishing and things happen, I'm going to tell you they do. And if you've done any fishing over the years, you know that I'm preaching from practice. So you turn around, you're fishing, you're bringing that line up, and oh boy, guess what? You notice that there's an abrasion, or your line has a weak spot, and now you're not sure about using that line. I always make sure I have plenty of extra. I don't want to be out there fishing and be unprepared, and all of a sudden now I'm down a piece of equipment because I couldn't take the time to have replacement equipment available. Case point, this particular tilt that I have not set up yet, I'll move forward a little bit. If you look, the end of this, and let me get this off here. If you look, this is a tilt that I was using last year, and right there in the line, I'll move it down to my gray sweatshirt so you can see it a little better, and I'll turn it a little bit so you can see it. But if you look right in the middle, you can see where that line has begun to tear. It's still strong. It's not going to break. But if I have a good solid fish on that line, and I'm talking a fish that's 10, 15 pounds, I do not want that particular spot of line to be the difference between me catching that fish and that fish getting away. So I'm actually going to turn around, and I have looked at my spool. I have inspected it, and I do not see any lines, any tears, any spots where that line is weakening. So I am going to turn around, and I'm going to cut. Another valuable piece of equipment in anybody's toolbox is a really good sharp pair of scissors. Because when you cut line, you want to make sure that it cuts nice and smooth. So I'm going to take that, and I just spilled my buttons. Anyway, now that I've cut that, so now I have a nice, let me see, get it up here where you can see it. Right about there. I have a nicely cut line. So I'm going to get this ready so when I'm ready to go out fishing, I can turn around and set up quickly. So I am going to take one of those little buttons, and again, they're really small, and I'm going to take that line that I just cut, and I'm going to pass it through the hole in that button as such. And I will admit, those holes are small, so sometimes it's hard trying to get it in the hole. But, and then I just wet it, because sometimes if you wet it a little bit, it's a little easier. And it is not. So when I passed it through the first hole, it did open up the line a little bit on the end. So I'm just going to trim it back a little bit more. Again, to have the end of that line just really nice and cut smoothly. And now that I've done that, I should have no problem getting it through the other hole. So here we go. I'm going to turn around and touche. Just like that, I was able to get it in. Oh, and of course, while we were doing that, our line has there. So what just happened was, while I was doing that, my line, I had taken the tension off that little knob that sets the drag on that spool, and because I had the tension off of it, it did turn a little bit, and it did unravel a little bit of line, and it wrapped around the spring. So again, I want to make sure my line is good and it has no abrasions or no weak spots. And where it wrapped around, it did actually upraise that line a little bit. So I'm going to move the button down a little bit now that I have it on. And I am going to trim that line back just a little bit more, because it did hook on that spring, and it could very well create a weak spot, and I don't want that. Alright, so now what I have is I have my line. I have a little button on there that I'm going to use to mark my depth when I'm in the water. And I'm going to go to my tackle, and I'm going to pull out the tray that has my swivels. And I'm going to reach in, I'm going to get a barrel swivel. And lately I've been putting on regular swivels. That way, if I create a lead or I want to change my lead, I can turn around and hook it on or take it off very quickly. So I am going to go with a little silver barrel swivel. I'm going to take my line, and I do, everybody has their favorite knots. Mine is to take the line, and I do pass it through the eye of the swivel. I do pass it through twice, because again, I want a knot that's going to hold. And there is a name for this knot. Do I know off the top of my head again what the name for the knot is? No. But what I do is, I create a little loop, like so. And then I go around the line. Probably with 4 or 5 turns. Like so. And then after I've gone through 4 or 5 turns, now what I do is now I take it and I pass through both those loops, like so. And then I pull that line and I draw it tight. It's always good to put a little bit of moisture on your line when you're tightening it, and then give it a good tug. And that creates a knot. I've been using this knot for as long as I've been fishing, and I have yet to ever have a fish pull the line off that swivel. I've never had it happen. I've had lines break. I've had swivels break. I have yet to have a knot come undone. So when you have a knot that works, why mess with it? So And there's what you have. I trim the little bit of tail, and I'm good to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to wrap that line up, put it back on the spool, and I'm going to look for one of those rubber bands that I had. I know I had like 4 or 5 of them. So I put them in here. Oh, I put them on the table. Give me 1 sec. So I'm going to take, again, a rubber band. I'm going to put it around that spool a couple turns. So it is good and tight. Just like so. And that's not going to come undone. I am going to tighten up my... I'm going to tighten up my nuts. And... like so. And make sure that when this is my bag, it's not going to open. And then the other thing I do is I inspect the steel on the flag. I don't want to get out on the ice and I go to pull up my flag and it's rusted and I can't pull it up. I mean, that's just, it's a simple thing to check. It's a simple thing to fix. And it really stinks if you get out on the ice and now you can't use the tip up because you didn't properly check your equipment. So again, I think we all know it goes without saying, always check your equipment. So I check my flag. And another piece of equipment that I do keep, and you know, again, I have one here, but I do keep a small piece of steel wool, and the reason is if there is a little bit of rust, I do like to take the steel wool and I like to just rub off the rust. I'm going to just move a couple of things here real quick. Bear with me. Like I said, you know, when we're getting our equipment ready, we do tend to have equipment all over the place, and we do tend to make a mess. And if I don't clean up this mess, I'll be in the doghouse with my wife. So I do want to make sure that I try to keep up with this and not create a disaster here. So I'm going to put that right down there. All right. So this particular tip up, the steel on my flag is good. It doesn't need any cleaning. If you look, there is a little right here. There is a little, it's like a staple. And the steel goes into that. That just helps to hold it so in your bag the flag doesn't go up. And make sure that the flag is not pinched. You don't want to create a rip in that flag. So anyway. So this tip up is all set and good to go. All right. Real quick, I talked before about a little bit of equipment and about what works for me. A really important piece of equipment when you're out fishing, especially if you catch chain pickerel or if you catch pike because they have teeth, is in everybody's equipment bag, you should have a hook extractor or a hook puller. This particular one, very simple design. It just has a metal handle. You squeeze it, it closes the mouth. That way, if you have to go in the fish's mouth, grab that hook, you can get it out without sticking your fingers in where those teeth are because they can cut you pretty bad. I mean, a good-sized pike could actually take your finger right off. So you do not want to be putting your fingers inside the mouth of a fish like a pickerel or a pike because those teeth are very sharp. Another piece of equipment that is a must in every person's tackle box is a pair of needle nose pliers. I have a pair that I do use that it does have a cutter. The reason you want a cutter, and you're going to laugh, but it happens. You know, things happen. Things happen all the time. And I can tell you in the past, typically clothing, you know, these hooks get very sharp. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a hook and it gets caught in my clothing. And you can't get it out. Not without tearing the clothing. So by having the cutter, if my hook gets caught, I can take my cutter, I can put it on the hook, snap that hook and get it out without tearing my clothing. Or more importantly, I can tell you right now, there's not a fisherman out there that hasn't gotten a hook. They haven't hooked themselves, whether it be a hand or whatever. Usually it's just the very tip, and usually you just take it out and, you know, curse a little bit, end up with a little spot that's bleeding a little bit, and all's good, and you go about your business and have a great fishing day. But in the event that you did hook yourself and it was beyond that barb, you may have to turn around and cut that hook and pass it through, because you're not going to be able to draw it back if you hooked beyond that barb. So always important to have a cutter. And then the needle nose, again, you can use these to get a hook out. If you're putting split shot on, you can use them to squeeze the split shot to close it down or open it up. It's just a valuable tool. Another piece of equipment I'm going to mention right now before I end this video is when you ice fish and it's very cold outside, you will form ice on your holes, and it's important for you to be able to get to your line and be able to feel if there's a fish on that line and set that hook. And also to check your line once in a while. It's important for you to be able to get into the hole and be able to access the water. And so every ice fisherman out there knows that you use an ice skimmer. And there are different types. This one's a metal one. This is a very old one. For those of you that come from Massachusetts, especially Central Mass, there used to be a store in Worcester called Spags. It's been gone for a very long time. And Spags was absolutely fantastic. They had more fishing equipment than any place around that I knew. The prices were dirt cheap, and it was a gold mine. And unfortunately, old man Spag, he passed away. Family took over the business, and over the years, the store Spags ended up closing and is no longer around. But this particular skimmer was actually bought at Spags, and as funny as it seems, still has the price tag on it, and it was a whopping $2.95. So if you can show me a piece of equipment nowadays in your ice fishing equipment that costs $2.95, I say buy it. Because let's face it, nothing costs $2.95 anymore. But I've had this probably since I was about 12 or 14 years of age, and it's still in the exact same shape it was the day I bought it. So things were definitely made better back then. Quality was better, and the prices were better. So we're going to call it what it was. Better. Anyway, nowadays equipment has gotten cheaper. This particular skimmer, very cheap design, very cheap quality. It's a company called Lajoie, L-A-K-C-O. Obviously, the people that named it don't understand the proper phonetics, because typically you don't have K before C, but that's just me. It is very light, so as far as the carrying equipment goes, it is nice that it's very light. I give them that. I mean, the weight on this is no more than an ounce or two. However, the body is aluminum, bends very easy. The skimming part is plastic. The quality is not there. I can tell you I'm not going to have this in 40 years. The skimmer I just showed you, I got that when I was 14 or 15. I'm 59 now. I've had that for the better part of 40 years. And it's in the same quality it was in the day I bought it. This one, I can tell you if I get 5 years out of this one without it bending or getting damaged, I'll be doing pretty good. The only reason it still looks like it does is because it's only a backup piece of equipment for me. I use the other one typically when I'm ice fishing. This is just to have a backup. And a note on backups, I myself, I'm a person that I like to scuba dive. I'm an outdoorsman, like I said. And anyone that does anything in the outdoors knows you always have a backup. If you're diving, you want to have a backup mask for your, strap for your mask. You want to have, any piece of equipment that can break in the water, you want to back up. Ice fishing or fishing in a pond or lake is no different. If you're going to go out and you're going to take time and go out and go fishing, anything that's going to break and ruin your trip, you want to have a backup for. So this is a backup. A little note again on equipment is I just talked about how cheap this is, and I want to say I think I bought this. I think it was I think this was like $9.99, which is not an unreasonable price nowadays for something like this. But I talked about the quality, $9.99, and the quality just isn't there. And if you look, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. I prefer stuff that's made in the USA. On this piece of equipment, it's not. It's made in China, and you get what you pay for. Okay? I don't think the quality's there, and it wasn't made here in America. So, again, whenever you can, buy American-made products. The quality tends to be better. You know what you're getting. The only reason I have this in my equipment bag is, again, as a spare. That's it. If you're fishing with minnows, shiners, or live, bait fish, you do need a small net. You want to be able to get them out. You don't want to forget that. And I said before, you want to make sure that you have good scissors. I do have a pair of durable, we call them trauma shears. They're widely used in the emergency services. But ultimately, a utility shear, it's good for anything. This particular shear will actually cut a penny. So, I mean, if I had to cut a hook with it, it is durable. It will cut. Unfortunately, what they're not known for is, I mentioned before about cutting line really nice and clean, and these are not traditionally going to do that. I can very easily cut through heavy material with it, but I'm not going to cut a piece of paper finely and cleanly with it. It's more of a utility or a heavy-duty shear. And then, of course, like I said, a pair of shop scissors, absolutely essential. I'll talk about actual fishing equipment in a different video later, but that's some of the things that people tend to forget when they're putting together their equipment. I did want to mention it. The other thing I will mention before I go, and I'll probably do another video later, talking about setting up my own, or how to set up your own leads, make your own leads, because buying leads can be expensive, and you want to be able to make your own because it gives you control over how long they are, what equipment you're putting on them. And I will tell you that I do have a spool of Suffix Ice Magic line, 6-pound test. I typically use this for making leads. It is an orange line. I do like to use a different color so you can spot it, and when it's in the water you can tell that your leader line is coming up. And again, it's cold water line, which is important. On that note, I've taken up enough time for one day. I think I'm gonna stop at this point. And again, thank you for listening. This was my first time doing this, and we'll see if I can follow my ice fishing season this year. I do want to continue these videos throughout my ice fishing season and see how it goes. As I said when I first started this video, my ice fishing partner is not going to be with me this year. He's going to be down in college in New York. And with that being said, these videos are going to be a way of me sharing and having him be able to join me in my adventures when I go out on the ice, and be able to have it be a part of him as well. So thank you. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.